Ghosts in the New York City by Sharks Reading Glasses on AO3. Chapter 9 Sums of Our Parts. Wade stirred on the couch with a crick in his neck as he struggled to wake up, his head leaning against the armrest and a weight against his legs. He peeled an eye open and found one of Peter's quilts thrown over his waist, but blinked when he noticed Danny sitting cross-legged in front of the middle of the couch, on the floor. Sitting dressed in night clothes. Peter's laptop was on the coffee table, and Danny was browsing through a handful of internet tabs with Fido resting on top of his head, their ghostly tail hanging over the kid's shoulders. Wade groaned and brought a hand to cup his eyes as Danny turned to look at him before leaning his head back on the top of the cushions. "Morning," Danny greeted, sounding way too awake for a teenager this early in the morning. Fido crooned on his own greeting, slowly sliding off the back of Danny's head and wiggling into the teen's hair to try to stay in one spot. "Ugh," Wade whined with a hand still over his face. "Nobody should be that chipper in the early morning." Danny let out a huff of laughter. "Does it count if I never actually went to sleep?" Danny asked with amusement, reaching up to adjust Fido. "And, by the way, it's nearly 10. Wade rolled his eyes and nudged Danny lightly with one of his knees. "Smart ass," Wade said, grabbing the blanket and throwing it over the kid's head. He swung his legs to the floor and stepped around the kid to head to the laundry room to sag his Deadpool mask before crossing the hallway into the kitchen to grab something to eat, as both Danny and Fido let out a surprised squeak. After Danny had woken up from his impromptu power nap yesterday, turning the brightest shade of neon green when he realized Wade and Peter were making soft cooing noises at him, he had grabbed Peter's laptop and made a hasty retreat to Peter's room, with the excuse of getting some more homework done. Fido had stopped to circle Wade once, trailing softly before following Danny down the hall. He and Peter had shared a soft snicker before they went to the kitchen and settled into the kitchen chairs, trying to figure out the logistics of where Wade could sleep. They had eventually decided that they could share the couch, although it would be a tight fit, even if they laid on opposite ends. After that, Peter had decided to try and prep for dinner while Wade went to his duffel bag and dragged the little clothes he had brought with him, and his suit, of course, into the laundry room to dump them out into the washer. He had spent 30 minutes searching through all the little pockets in his suit, making sure piles of odds and ends. Wade had stopped by a safe house 20 minutes away from the apartment to drop off most of his clothes and equipment, but he felt he didn't have time to do an in-depth inspection of his suit before he headed over to Peter's. He had ended up finding a spare lockpick set, a couple lighters, his spare Hello Kitty helmet key for a different safe house. That was where that was. Fucking hell. He needed a key ring for this shit. His combat knife, and a handful of small switchblades. He had left most of the bits and bobs on the washer, stuffing the knives in his duffel where Danny hopefully wouldn't mess with them, before going back to the kitchen and talking with Peter, and maybe sneaking a quick cuddle or two. Danny had trailed in not long after, with Peter's laptop in hand, Fido curled around his neck and purring like a radioactive cat, while Danny hesitantly asked Peter for help with some of his homework. It had continued like this until dinner, and a small warmth had bloomed in Wade's chest as he watched Peter interact with the kid, only offering a few comments that had Danny laughing and Peter rolling his eyes. After dinner, Peter had started to get ready for patrol, probably feeling safe enough to do now that Wade was back. For a hot minute, Wade thought that Danny would insist of going with Peter for patrol. Testing like a spring as Peter had slipped on his Spider-Man suit, he had only hesitantly relaxed when Peter had ruffled his hairs in reassurance. Wade had thought that it was a little odd that Danny was anxious about Peter patrolling, considering he had never voiced any of his concerns before, but put it out of his mind. Wade and Danny had sat on the couch to watch TV with Fido, bouncing between them for affection, while Peter left his patrol, Danny watched TV, while Wade tried to stay awake. He had a rush of his last job, trying to get back to New York, and the red eye and time zone difference wasn't doing him any favors. He must have fallen asleep before Peter got back. Wade blinked as the thought registered with him. That's gotta be a ghost thing, right? Yellow piped up as Wade paused before peeking around the corner into the living room, checking for empty cans of energy drinks or snack wrappers, but found the living room clear. What kind of ghost needs sleep, anyways? Hey, Homeslice, did you really keep your ass awake the whole night? Wade asked as Danny threw the blanket off his head and back onto the sofa, Fido churling softly. Wade thought with all the shit going on, the kid would be exhausted. Don't worry, Danny tossed over his shoulders, the keys on Peter's keyboard clacking away. I'm used to it. Wade stifled an incredulous laugh. Doing what? Wade asked. Doing the cha-cha slide? Danny laughed. Going on patrols, Danny said distractedly. Sometimes I would stay up so late that there was no point in going to sleep, and it would wind up being easier to stay awake the rest of the night. I thought you were supposed to sleep when you're dead, Violet asked as Wade turned back to the kitchen, finding a piece of paper with his name on it stuck to the fridge by Peter's webs. He's only half dead, Red reminded. So it's not a ghostly thing? Yellow asked. No, you moron, Greenie growled. It is a youthful teenager thing, lucky bastard. Hey, Wade rebutted harshly as he unstuck the note and unfolded it, laxly on the name calling. Hey, Wade, sorry I didn't wake you up when I got back from patrol. You look like you needed it. Had to leave early today for Bludge. Can you do me a favor and check on Danny's injury? And don't let him skip breakfast. He didn't eat anything when I left this morning. Thanks. Heart. Spider. Oops, Wade thought as he flinched. Ha! Violet laughed. Spider-Man? More like Spider-Mom. Wade stifled a laugh. He would have to mention that one to the kid. Yo, Homeslice, Wade called out as he opened the fridge and tried to find breakfast foods. Did you eat breakfast already? Wade heard Danny freeze as the sound of clattering keys stopped. Yes? Danny said hesitantly, before yelping. Fido, stop! Right, and I'm the Dama Llama, Wade said sarcastically, before grabbing the milk. Wade was used to eating on the go, so he wasn't that great at making home-cooked meals. Danny would have to settle with cereal. Come on, Homeslice, you're killing me. Get in here, Peter's orders. Wade made a bowl for himself before he sat the other one on the table with a spoon. Frosted Flakes again. One of these days he was going to have to talk to Peter into getting something more sugary, like one of those adventure-themed marshmallow ones. Danny walked in with the laptop in his hands, with Fido hanging off his back of Danny's shoulder, and Wade lifted the mask over his mouth. Wade nudged the milk, cereal, and bowl in Danny's direction as he sat down and then continued to eat while he was leaning against the counter. Wade watched as Danny distractingly poured a meager amount of cereal into his bowl while his eyes remained glued on the screen. Fido let out an annoyed chirp before they sunk off the kid's shoulders and pushed the laptop out of Danny's reach. Fido, come on! Danny groaned as he reached for the laptop, but Fido hipped up a laugh and nudged it away further. Wade hid a smirk as he raised his bowl to his mouth and took another bite. Fido would do the same thing to him even during his jobs, which made things interesting at least. Sorry, Squirt, Wade chuckled. The distraction monitor has spoken. Fido chirped proudly as they perked up, hanging off the laptop screen before flying over to Wade and nuzzling his face. Danny rolled his eyes. I'm not that short, Danny said, mushly, pushing his food around in his bowl, his head resting in his free hand. Wade snorted, dropping his spoon in his bowl as he reached up to pet Fido, who chirped in consent. Kid, When you stop being eye level with my chest, then we could talk, Wade replied. And you're eating that entire bowl. Spider Mom's rules. Danny chuckled weakly, finally taking his first bite. It's just so weird to eat when I'm not hungry, Danny said, around his mouth full, keeping his eyes on the bowl, and Wade blinked underneath his mask. He couldn't really relate. Peter's calorie intake was insane on a good day, and Wade's was nothing to sniff at either. It was actually a bit weird to not see Danny eating whatever they had available, considering he couldn't stop the last time Wade had seen him. Peter mentioned something about that yesterday, Wade commented as he took another bite. Danny dropped his spoon in the bowl and plucked at the loose cord around his neck, lifting a capsule of dully glowing plasm out from under his shirt. Yeah, Danny mused sulkingly, letting the capsule fall to his chest before picking up his spoon and going back to pushing his food around in his bowl, his eyes never connecting with Wade's. My powers make it so I don't need to eat if there's ambient ectoplasm near me. Lucky me, right? Wade paused with his spoon midway in his mouth, while Fiddle whined worriedly. It felt like he'd stepped on a landmine and didn't know whether it was a dud or not. Could be worse, right? Wade tried cautiously, lowering his spoon back into his bowl. Better than eating your body weight in food every day. Danny huffed canonically. That probably would have worried my parents less, Danny said irritably, before taking another bite. It always freaks them out how little I used to eat. They hated it. Wade tensed, and Fiddle trilled anxiously as he floated back to the table, burying under the arc of the kid's arm. Hey, Wade asked hesitantly. You okay? Yeah, Danny sighed. I'm fine. All right, Wade thought as he continued eating, choosing to do the smart thing and keep quiet. Parents still a touchy subject. Avoid at all costs. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Whitey jerked. Wade rolled his eyes under his mask before he looked over to the laptop screen Fido had helpfully pushed towards him earlier. 6 new tabs were open on the web browser in addition to what Danny had opened before. Wade quirked a brow at some of the titles. History of Mutants and Enhanced Protection Act. The difference between a mutant and enhanced. Mutant protest in Washington, D.C. Coming out as a mutant. And metahuman / enhanced safe houses near you. Yikes, Wade thought as he scrambled the last degrees of cereal of his bowl. Either the kid has some serious case of ADHD, or something about yesterday is bugging him. Peter wanted me to look at your injury, Wade said, cautiously, as he turned his bowl to the sink. We'll do it after you're finished, and the whole bowl, kid. 'Kay, Danny whispered, and Wade walked back into the laundry room for the med kit. He brought it out to the living room and set it on the coffee table while he kneeled on the floor in front of the sofa, opening the kit to see what supplies he had to restock the next time he was out. Danny walked into the living room 5 minutes later, carrying the closed laptop in his arms, as Fido hitched a bride on his shoulders. The kid set the laptop down and gently picked Fido off his shoulders, settling him next to Wade on the cushions before pulling his shirt over his head and laying back against the couch, his hands clenched to his knees, and keeping his eyes firmly forward towards the blinked TV. Wade took a deep breath and held it for a moment to slow his heartbeat, as if he was taking aim through a scope to try and reel in his temper. Pate has hesitantly given him vague details about Danny's injuries, and it was the push he'd needed to get home quicker. Nothing like taking his fury out on fuckwads who probably deserved it anyways. But seeing the aftermath right in front of him was stirring up a rage that had him looking for a fight the night Peter had pinned him to the wall. The burning was left unwrapped, probably to let it breathe, with only a handful of gauze taped over the certain spots. It almost looked like a weird tan line, the wound colored in a darker shade of Danny's skin tone, and only raised in a few places. As soon as the burn was visible, Fido had shrunken into Wade's side briefly before letting off a distressed curls as it clawed to the kid's side. Danny flinched when Fido touched his arm before he unclenched his hand around his shirt and twisted into a ball, and petted Fido's back smoothly. Wade was silent as he began to take the gauze off Danny's chest, tapping his leg every time he was about to peel away the tape to give the kids some warning. He checked the spots under the gauze quickly to make sure they weren't infected and found the remnants of the popping blisters. Only a few of the spots still looked tender, so Wade grabbed a packet of antibiotic ointment, alcohol wipes, fresh squeezer and gauze, and a medical tape from his kit. "You want to tell me what all that stuff on the laptop was about?" Wade asked as he finished putting off the used dressings from Danny's chest. Danny stilled, his hands hovering over Fido. Wade kept quiet, waiting for Danny to tell him to fuck off or start talking. It would be up to the kid if he wanted to answer him or not, and Wade would go with whatever Danny wanted. He tore open the alcohol wipes and gently rubbed over a few areas that looked tender. Danny growled at his lips as he debated with himself as Wade ripped the antibiotic ointment and carefully put a healthy glob off of each sore. "I've never had a label that described what I am," Danny finally whispered, while Wade was cutting off strips of medical tape. "Or at least one I could understand. The other specters called me a halfa, but I don't really know what that means. But now I do. It means the accident turned me into a hybrid, and now my mom and dad know that too." Danny bit his lip, and Wade paused as Fido whined. "Mr. Nelson sent me an email about what he and Mr. Murdoch discussed with my parents. They never thought that I could be enhanced or a metahuman. They just assumed right off the bat that I was possessed, but now they know, and I can't get that thought out of my head. From their point of view, if I was overshadowed, then all they had to do was get the phantom out of me. Problem solved. They'd have their son back. But they know I'm not possessed, that I am Phantom, and that's a whole different story." "You think they'll feel different about you now?" Wade guessed, holding a dressing square to one of the sores on Danny's chest with one hand and securing it with the strip of tape with the other. Then he laughed sadly, resuming petting Fido anxiously as the little shade nuzzled in his hand. "I know they will," Danny replied fiercely, while Wade continued to tape pieces of gauze to the remaining listens. "They hate ghosts. Most of the time they'd rather experiment on them or vaporize them and send them back to the ghost zone. Phantom's no different." "Kid," Wade tried to start, but Danny continued over him. "They called me an it," Danny whispered brokenly, his hands trembling over Fido as Wade froze. "The last time I was here, after the fight with Vlad, I overheard them talking about it at the hotel by accident, and they called Phantom an it. They acted like Phantom was a thing that didn't feel or think, and they were so angry at Phantom, so angry at me. I think that's why I was so scared to tell them, because I didn't want them to hate me, and I can't stop imagining that they'll feel that way when they decide what they're going to do." Wade dropped his hands to his lap and clenched his fists, trying to curb his anger as one phrase kept repeating in his head, while the trembling in the kid's hand migrated across his shoulders. They acted like Phantom was a thing. Wade took a deep breath and raised his hands to his abdomen piece of gauze, taping it over the last blister before he spoke. "I never told you how I got my mutation." Wade started, after he tugged his mask off, turning his body so that he was resting his back against the couch, with his legs outstretched beneath the coffee table, as Danny shakenly pulled his shirt over his head. Wade started organizing the med kit to give his hands something to do. "A while ago, and I'm talking like a few years before I met Peter, I was diagnosed with cancer, and my girlfriend at the time, well, she was really broken up about it, but there wasn't really much anyone could do. You could Point to any part of my body, and 90% of the time, you'd find some sort of cancer cell. Brain, blood, stomach, liver, lungs, you name it, I had it, type of deal. Not even chemo could help. But Ness wouldn't take no for an answer. So she went around trying to find the miracle cure, found a lot of shady shit. That's how determined she was to cure me. But there was this one program, government run, covered operation kind of thing, and I kind of thought, hey, I've served before. No big deal, as long as I'm cured. I don't really care. So, I volunteered. They were supposed to be making super soldiers. Wade clenched his teeth, feeling his scars ache as Danny leaned forward and rested his elbow on his knee, the trembling in the body reeling. Fido was still nuzzled onto the kid's side, but they gazed at Wade somberly. He took a breath. They weren't making super soldiers. Wade excelled. They were making super slaves. They gave me this sternum so my X gene turned on, and once my mutation activated, they were going to sell me off to the highest bidder. Problem was, they had to force the mutation to activate. Mutations only activate like that in situations of extreme high stress. They tortured you? Danny seethed, deepenly, the toxic green glow from his eyes casting shadows, and even Fiddle let out a low, short, static hiss. Yup, Wade replied. They tortured me. I don't really remember what they did to me. Liar, Whiny shrieked in his ear. You remember everything they did to us. But what I do remember is how they treated us, Wade continued, his hands stilling after he finished putting away the last bit of kit, before he dropped them into his lap. I wasn't the only one they had managed to con, but they never really used our names. Always called us subject, insert number here, or weapon A through Z, or freak. They wouldn't let us tell our names to each other either. It was like our identities were erased and we were just things. Wade paused as he tried to figure out what to say next. What happened to them? Danny asked, the glow still pulsating in his eyes, and Wade let out a single syllable of laughter. I killed them, Wade whispered wildly. I got every one of those son of a bitches, kid. And I made it hurt. The intensity of Danny's eyes faded as the kid relaxed. An oppressed feeling Wade hadn't noticed before started to die down. Good, Danny bit out, his voice low but soft. Yeah, well, story doesn't end there, kid, Wade replied. After all that bullshit, I couldn't go back to Ness. I didn't want to drag her into my shit, so I started over. Whole new state, got a new name, went back to being a mercenary, Deadpool, the mercenary, with a mouth. Didn't really help, though. Problem was, people still didn't treat me like I was a person, and I never stopped feeling like a tool or a weapon. But then I met Peter, and it was rough at first. He threatened to web my face to my ass the first time we actually started talking. But no matter what, he always treated me like I was a person, and after that, things got better. He made me want to be better. Now, I ain't no saint. Some people deserve more than a bullet to the head for what they do. And he knows that. He doesn't agree with it, but that doesn't stop him from seeing me as a person. Wade stopped to take a breath, and he turned to look at Danny in the eyes. Kid, your accident, this whole mess, it shouldn't have happened to you, Wade said firmly, and Danny chewed at his lip. Mistake or not, accident or not, if Maddie and Jack can't realize that, and still think you're being some hybrid makes you less of a person, then fuck 'em, kid. That just shows you the type of people they are. The source of your power, the source of our power, doesn't define us. To me and Peter, your friends and your sister, you will always just be Danny. As Wade finished, Danny's eyes got moist, and Fiddle whistled encouragingly. Before he could start crying, Danny got off the couch and slipped onto the floor next to Wade, leaning his forehead against Wade's shoulder. Hey, Wade, Danny whispered as he continued to hide his face. I know this probably sounds selfish, but I'm really glad. I'm Really glad you didn't die, even though you wanted to sometimes. I'm happy you're here. Wade felt his own eyes get a little misty, and he swung his arm around Danny in a half hug, Fido observing them quietly from the couch. Me too, kid, Wade said. They stayed that way for a little bit longer, before Danny pulled back, stifling slightly as he dragged his sleeve over his eyes. Wade let Danny out from under his arms, pulling himself up to the couch. All right, that's enough depressing stuff for today, Wade said as he held his hand out to Danny. I think a distraction is in order. What'd you say, Holmeslice? Danny laughed, using Wade's hand to pull himself up. Sounds like fun, Danny choked out, scrubbing the last traces of tears off his face as Fido cheered from the couch, flying up in the air and zipping in excitement circles. What do you have in mind? You spent the last 3 months recharging those ghost batteries of yours. Wade smirked, crossing his arms slightly. Learn any new tricks? Danny blinked before he grinned widely, his canines sharp. I learned a few things, Danny replied, letting his core bloom out and change into Phantom. Then let's see what you got, Holmeslice, Wade answered. Somehow the kid's grin got sharper. Peter sighed as he trembled up the last set of stairs to his apartment, his coat and scarf carefully tucked around his Spider-Man suit while he held the mask between his teeth, clenching a few grocery bags in each hand. Work today was stressful, as it always was on the Daily Budge. JJ was pushing for more Spider-Man photos, but Peter was reluctant to hand them over if they were just going to be used to throw him under the bus. After his 5-hour shift of developing his photos and submitting placement drafts to JJ, he was more than ready to go home and see how Danny was doing. Then he remembered how woefully empty the fridge was and marched himself to the nearest grocery store. And on his way there, the grocery store, he had stopped someone trying to steal a car. Who tries to steal cars in New York during the middle of the day when people are everywhere? He thought as he peered around the blue frame of his staircase, checking to make sure no one was in the halls before he made a dash to his apartment door. His blue beanie starting to slip off his head, he passed the bags in his right hand over to his left as he dug his coat pocket for keys and turned the correct one in the lock. He closed his eyes in relief, passing the key to his left hand while he pushed the door open and started to shrug out of his coat. Hey, sorry I'm late, Peter said around the mask in his mouth as he opened his eyes, setting the bags down on the floor and kicking the door closed. There was this thing I had to take care of on my way home. Peter paused and observed the absolute ridiculous scene in front of him. Both Danny and Wade were staring at him with wide, deer-in-the-headlights eyes, the Ghostbuster theme song playing off the speakers in the background. Peter could see Fido curled up in the ghost hammock in the corner, his eyes delighted as they peered over the side. Wade was standing to the left end of the couch, closest to the door, still in his night clothes while wearing his Deadpool mask, and Peter could feel his heat rise against his cheeks. Why the hell hadn't Wade changed out of those silly, juicy short shorts? Wade was holding one of his switchblades in one hand and a pillow in the other like a shield. A few of his other switchblades were embedded in the couch and the coffee table, and the curtains on the balcony window were on fire. Green fire. Lethal fire. Danny was standing on the couch in his ghost form, 1 foot in the cushion and 1 foot on the backrest, while holding his head in his hands and sticking out lime, snake-like tongue, and Danny's head was detached. Wade could probably tell that he was about to start yelling as Peter let the mask drop from his mouth, because he shifted with his hands and the knife behind his back and pointed at Danny with his pillow. Danny started it, Wade said calmly, and Danny pouted in disbelief while he shifted to hold a detached head in one hand. Deadpool, you fucking snitch, Danny accused as he pointed a finger at Wade. Language, Peter said on reflex, and he could tell Wade was smirking under his mask. Yeah, Danny, watch your fucking language. Wade laughed, and Peter felt his face get red. Wade! Peter yelled hysterically, and both Wade and Danny looked slightly chased. Peter took a deep breath and let it out slowly while he reached for one of his beanies and draped it over his eyes. I'm going to count to 10, Peter said slowly, face still hidden in his hat. And when I'm done, the living room is going to be spotless. 1. Peter heard Wade and Danny scramble to get everything in order as he silently counted. The music cut off as someone paused it. When Peter finished, he pulled the hat away from his face and crossed his arms. Danny and Wade were sitting next to each other on the corner of the sofa, Danny floating a few inches off the ground, trying to block Fido from his view as they patted down the last embers of the green fire on the curtains. All the knives were closed and neatly lined up on the coffee table. The spare pillow was set on the couch, and it looked like none of the ghostly flames had charged at anything. So, Peter said as he tapped his finger on his arm, his coat still hanging off of one of his shoulders. Anyone want to tell me what that was about? Danny was just showing me some of his new tricks he learned. Wade piped up, his voice free of guilt. Peter shot him a look. And you had to use your knives as practice? Peter said, spectacly. Wade winced, but Danny came to his rescue. Please, Danny said confidently, hovering higher to lean his body on Wade's shoulder, while Fido continued to watch from the corner. Without ghosts' weapons, you guys couldn't hurt me if you Before Danny had finished his sentence, Wade reached up and covered Danny's mouth with his hands, and Peter raised a brow. Danny was probably right, but that didn't mean the apartment was significantly invincible. He was about to say so when he was reminded of something. He remembered when he was 7 and his Aunt May had gotten home early while Uncle Ben was helping him with a science project in the kitchen. They'd gotten a bit carried away, and paint and glue had ended up everywhere. Instead of being mad, May had just laughed, dipped her fingers in some paint, and smeared it across both their faces. Next time, she said, pacing a kiss on their hands. Don't start without me, 'kay? Peter closed his mouth and sighed, uncrossing his arms and bringing a hand to rub at his eyes to hide his smile. No more mock ghost fights in the apartment, Peter said. You got it, Pete. Wade started, but choked when Peter brought his free hand up and webbed his feet to the floor. Not without me, Peter finished, peeking between his fingers. Danny and Fido cheered while Wade tried to keep his balance. Aw, come on, Pete. Wade pouted as he shifted his feet in the webbing. You totally cheated. All's fair in love and war, Wade, Danny cried as he rose closer to the ceiling and floated over the sofa. Peter turned his body and aimed a web at Danny, and Danny sneered as he went intangible. Just as he turned back, Peter's spider senses pinged at the back of his neck, and Peter gasped. Aches of white static danced briefly across Danny's chest, foaming white rings and turning Danny back to his normal foam. Fido trilled, alarmed, while Danny looked surprised as he dropped like a brick over the sofa, letting out a noise as hurt as he tumbled over the side and landed on the floor by the coffee table. Danny! Peter yelled, nearly knocking the grocery bags as he raced over to crouch by Danny while Wade cursed quietly. Danny, are you okay? I'm okay, Danny piped up cheerily, pushing himself to sit on the floor. Fido sipped over to Danny's face, curling and twirling around his neck as he chirped. Man, I haven't done that in a while. What the hell was that? Wade asked, still trying to wiggle out the webs. It's nothing, Danny reassured, almost embarrassed as he rubbed his head. Sometimes if I lose concentration, I just turn back without meaning to. I used to do it a lot when I first got my powers. It's fine. All right, Peter said, hesitantly, pulling Danny off the floor. But maybe you're done using your powers for the day, okay? One more trick, and then I'm done. Promise, Danny said, walking past Peter with Fido still curled around his neck, to stand by Wade. Peter couldn't help but watch as Danny touched Wade's arm and turned them both intangible, to walk Wade through the webs at his feet. His spidey senses hadn't gone off again, and Peter wondered if it had gone off because Danny could have been hurt. As Wade and Danny gathered up the abandoned groceries and made their way to the kitchen, Peter decided he would keep an eye on it and pulled it out of his mind for now. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a blooper before I give you my one note on this fanfic and then, or this chapter specifically, and my big announcement that I'm really excited for. So, here's the blooper. Hey, sorry I'm late, Peter said, around the mask. Ugh, what the... I shouldn't have put that one in my mouth. Never put a wipe in your mouth, especially if it's a makeup wipe. Oh my god. Yeah, no, I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, because clearly it was not. But at the moment, past Echo really said, well, it's future Echo's problem. And future Echo here to say, I hate you. But onto my notes. This chapter had one of my favorite lines that I still to this day quote. Not exactly, I quote it in my own way, like if somebody says this specific line, I then say this kind of thing. You'll understand what I mean once I say the quote. So the quote is, yeah, Danny, watch your fucking language. So whenever one of my friends ever says, hey, watch your language or language, I then reply, yeah, blank, their name. Or sometimes I don't even put their name, just, hey, yeah, watch your language, right? Watch your fucking language. Sorry, my bad. Almost forgot the fucking part. It's one of my favorite lines. I don't know why it's so funny to me, but it is, and it makes me so happy, and it fills me with joy, and it itches that part of my brain that goes woo 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 woo. If that makes any sense, I hope that makes sense to one of you, because it makes sense to me. And on to my big announcement that I'm really happy for and really excited for, which is live recordings. Now, it's gonna be a while before I end up integrating this into YouTube, but what I am going to be doing for specifically the people that are in my Discord server, they're going to be able to, I'm going to start doing these stages, which is like, I don't know how to explain it. If you're in Discord, you're in Discord and you know, which is basically you sit and you listen to a talker. It's kind of like a podcast, like Twitter's stages. No, Twitter's not stages. Hold up. What are those called? Twitter pods? Whatever. Twitter does this, and Discord also does it. These Discord stages. And basically what you get is me sitting as I'm recording, and you guys are taken through my process of recording. The benefits of this would most likely and most definitely be, one, you will actually be able to listen to a story ahead of time, because as mentioned before, I record days in advance, right? Two, you will get a lot of my reactions, especially on those fanfics that I haven't read before recording, right? So you will get my reaction, you will probably get a little bit of a rant, and you'll just get more of those notes at the end, but just longer, prolonged, and stuff like that. Three, you will get to see a lot of more of my personality come out, and just a lot of bloopers. If you like the blooper that you just saw, there's more where that came from. Trust me, a lot more. And last if not least, more content. You'll just get more content. I'm currently trying to get you guys as much content, right? I'm uploading daily on TikTok. I'm uploading daily on here. Wednesdays, I'm uploading twice. I'm working to start uploading twice on Thursdays. Or not Thursdays. Was it Thursdays? Yeah, it was Thursdays. On Thursdays, and I'm uploading and working on uploading twice on Tuesdays, and hopefully Mondays and Fridays, and every day of the week, where you don't just get one video a day, you get 2 videos a day. But obviously that comes after a while, and after I have more time and a while and time. Yeah, time is very important. And very limited. And as I mentioned before, I have 2 jobs, and unfortunately I can't just sit here and record all day, even though I would love to do that. But yeah, more content, and those people in the Discord, obviously more interaction with me, one-on-one kind of situation. But yeah, I can't wait to get that started. If you're in the Discord, it will be announced on the Discord when it's gonna happen. If you're in the YouTube, I will put a YouTube community post a couple days before it happens, if I remember. Don't quote me on that, but I will definitely announce it on the Discord and also on the YouTube, hopefully, as well. On the Discord, you guys will have a little bit of advance. On YouTube, you'll have like 3 days of advance, or a little less. I don't know. I'm still working out the logistics and when I could actually do it and stuff like that. It literally could be soon or not. I have to work that stuff out. But yeah, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear about it. But Discord is definitely hearing about this first. They've probably already heard about it and already all excited. And you're probably going to hear about it today. Today. You guys are going to hear the date specifically. I'll put a YouTube community post with the Discord server linked in the description. It's also linked in this video, so go ahead and, join. Because I hope I could do this. The goal is obviously weekly, but unfortunately, I need to set, a realistic goal. So hopefully I could do this at least 2 times a month, hopefully more. And it will be easier to produce this content because it's literally as I'm producing other content, and it's just content on top of content, right? So it will not take that much time off of my hands to produce, and it will just be so much more fun. And because it is a Discord stage, it means that if you are not there in the present listening to it as it's happening, then you miss out on it because it then, goes away and it's not going to be saved at all, or like recorded and then uploaded on YouTube. It's just not going to be saved at all unless one of you records it and then puts it on YouTube, but I highly doubt that's going to happen. So stay tuned for that and watch out for that. Hopefully I upload that right after the video uploads, and if not, a couple hours after or whatever. But as always, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds, have a wonderful day or night. Join our community Discord server, link is in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.